The Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University is honored to be a supporter of Indian Country Today. Working with award-winning professors, Cronkite students learn news reporting, social media, shooting and editing videos, and producing content for communications industries. Cronkite's 15 professional programs give students the opportunity to cover critical issues throughout the U.S. and beyond. Learn more at cronkite.asu.edu.
This is Indian Country Today.
Liosenchi Manyavu, thank you for joining us. I'm Karina Dominguez. Patty Telehungva is away. A federal court in Wisconsin is issuing an injunction to halt USDA relief that will impact Native farmers. The lawsuit, filed by a conservative nonprofit, alleges the Department of Agriculture's debt relief program discriminates against white farmers. According to the Intertribal Agricultural Council, the injunction will stop relief from reaching 8,000 tribal producers in need. Kara Boyd is a member of the state-recognized Lumbee tribe of North Carolina, and she's the founder of the Association of American Indian Farmers. Boyd says the USDA programs help address long-standing biased practices against Native American producers.
This emergency relief helps to relieve historic discrimination against Native American producers by providing them loan servicing. Oftentimes, Native American farmers have not had the opportunity to have loan servicing. When they got into foreclosure and they got into trouble, their loans were accelerated and they were foreclosed and they were forced into bankruptcy. But this measure here would pay off those loans.
The USDA posted to its website informing farmers who plan to make use of the program to continue filing their necessary paperwork. Mojave citizen and newly minted Pulitzer Prize winner Natalie Diaz took to Twitter to explain how people on her reservation are buying her book. In her tweet, she says, "We don't have bookstores where I come from. We don't even have a grocery store. So my tiny 120-degree desert town is selling my Pulitzer Prize poetry book at our dollar stores, we have 3, and liquor stores, we have several. Maybe this is the most poetry can be, and where." Natalie is an Arizona-based Indigenous, queer, Latino poet who earned the 2021 Pulitzer Prize for Poetry in the post-colonial love poem. Veteran NHL goalie Carey Price is 4 wins away from hoisting hockey's ultimate prize. The Okatchal First Nation star from British Columbia is leading the Montreal Canadiens to its first Stanley Cup final in nearly 30 years. Making the finals is a first for Price, who went to the semifinals twice in 2010 and 2014. Price has 360 career wins in the NHL and is the winningest goalie in the team history, and he's even won an Olympic gold medal with Team Canada. To read more on this story, check out IndianCountryToday.com and search for the headline, "A First for First Nations Hockey Star." Victoria Kutuk Bushman is one of the very first Inupiat conservation biologists. She's from Ukiakivik, which is on the north slope of Alaska. Caitlin Onawa Boisal has the story.
So I guess let's start from the beginning. How did you get involved in this?
There was one particular moment when I was a teenager and we were out in an aluminum boat out on the ocean, and we cut the engine and we're just sitting there, and we have the midnight sun where I come from in Ukavik, Alaska, and we had a pod of like 200 beluga whales that came through the region and just hung out with us at the boat. And that is a pretty rare occurrence.
From then on, Victoria's passion for wildlife became her mission. Her goal was simple: to put Indigenous values first.
I come from a whaling village, And whaling is a very important activity for us, but of course, like conservation from a Western standpoint, is very much focused on the preservation of species, the preservation of lands in ways that aren't necessarily conducive to Indigenous peoples. So I wanted to learn about conservation and how we could do it in a way that was more in line with Indigenous values, Inuit values.
Victoria says putting Indigenous people in charge of wildlife should be the foundation.
We also, of course, need Indigenous knowledge, and we need community members who really know the landscape to be making those decisions about how best to conserve lands, species, waters, all kinds of decisions that Indigenous communities, at least in the Arctic, make every day.
But when you put in the hard work, you get to see the payoff.
This is the most progress that we have seen, the most recognition of our rights and sovereignty as Indigenous peoples, as Native peoples, that we've seen since the 70s.
In Oklahoma, Caitlin Anawa Boycell, Indian Country Today.
And those are the headlines from Indian Country Today. I'm Karina Dominguez. When we come back, the editor of Osage News, Shannon Shaw Duty, gives us the latest on the filming of Killers of the Flower Moon.
Plus, the chairman of the Karuk Tribe in California joins us to talk about the tribe's COVID-19 recovery efforts when we return. Karuk Tribal Chairman Buster Attebery was elected to office in 2019, a year before the COVID-19 pandemic hit. He joins us now to talk about the tribe's recovery from the pandemic, the latest happenings on the Klamath River, and the declaration of a recent climate emergency. Welcome, Chairman.
Yotua, thank you.
Thanks for being here. Let's start off by learning a bit more about your tribe. Can you tell us where you're located and what your tribal population is?
Yes, the Karuk tribe is located in Northern California, the very northern part of California, just below the Oregon border, probably as the crow flies, 30 miles from the Oregon border. We are the third largest tribe in California. We have over 3,700 tribal members and over nearly 5,000 tribal descendants.
I want to talk about COVID-19. Can you tell us how your tribal nation was impacted in terms of case numbers and sort of where you're at now?
We were impacted, like everyone else, by all that COVID brought in. First, it was the initial response of how do we deal with COVID. We developed a COVID-19 team of health care workers, council members, staff, which worked closely with the CDC and the state, following the regulations pretty close to what the CDC and the state had required. We, following the initial reaction and the vaccination process, we were able to, the Karuk tribe has 3 health clinics which are open to all community members. We have three districts. One is in Wairika, California, which is off Interstate 5. Then you travel 75 miles down the Klamath River in Happy Camp, which is the headquarters. And then another 45 miles down the river is the Orleans, which is the other district in which we live. And we offered clinics, vaccination clinics at all these locations. And we were able to really get a high percentage of people vaccinated.
That's so wonderful to hear. What we heard around Indian country from various tribal leaders when they were going through COVID very heavily was that unfortunately they had lost elders. And in Indian country, we know how impactful that is to lose the elders who carry language and story and tradition. Is that something that happened at the Karuk tribe?
Absolutely. When the pandemic hit, we didn't have the manpower, needed to tackle all the testing, but we did want to make a concerted effort to protect our elders. And again, for that same reason, they hold the cultural knowledge of our culture, of our tribal traditions, our ceremonies, our language. And so we wanted to make a real effort to protect our elders for other reasons too. Obviously, the elderly are more susceptible, but for the tribes, it was the fact that we are still learning so much from our elders, and we want to be able to pass that knowledge on to our children.
You were elected to office in 2019, as I mentioned, a year before the pandemic started. Leading your tribal nation through this, what has that been like for you personally?
It's been a test. So I was re-elected in 2019. I was first elected in 2011, so I'm serving my third 4-year term as chairman for the Karuk tribe, and proudly serving that role. But yeah, it was a challenge. It was a challenge to, first of all, understand the pandemic, and then look for solutions and ways to help everybody in our communities. And again, first and foremost, throwing out that layer of protection to our elders, making sure they had the food they needed, make sure they had the health care they needed. And so I feel like we did that pretty well. We had very good results from our efforts as far as people getting infected. We set aside units that we could, where people could go and get away and be able to isolate if they did have it. So it was a scramble and a challenge, but I'm really proud of our staff who stepped up, and like all healthcare workers, they were our heroes.
Two more very quick questions on COVID, and then I want to switch gears to talk about climate change. The first is, what percentage of tribal citizens now are vaccinated at the Karuk tribe?
The Siskiyou County, where the Karuk tribe's districts are, there's the population of approximately 40 to 45,000. Again, the Karuk member enrollments around 3,700. Vaccines that were administered by the tribe were around 3,800. And the fully vaccinated individuals by the tribe were nearly 2,000. So the Karuk tribe has administered nearly 1/5 of the vaccines in this county.
And the money that you all received from the American Rescue Plan, how helpful and impactful was that for you all? How much money did you get, and sort of where is that going?
Yes, the money was very helpful. The COVID monies that came out, because we received the double whammy, if you will, with the COVID, right after the COVID, the fires had happened. We were located in an area where there's a high poverty rate, and employment numbers were down. So the COVID money, we dispersed some to our members to help out with their rent. Our housing units, our housing authority authorized, I want to say at least 2 months of free rent for all of our people living in our housing. We were able to purchase over 100 trailers for the fire victims.
I want to touch base about the fires that you mentioned. My understanding is that these fires have been happened as a result of forestry mismanagement. Is that correct?
That is correct. So it's not something that happened overnight. This is something that for the last approximately 100 years, mismanagement of our forests. And believe me, we know that this was not intentional, that the thoughts were good when the federal government outlawed the traditional ways that the indigenous people along the Klamath River reduced the fuels for fires out here. And that was by using fire itself. That the people who lived along the Klamath River for thousands of years paid attention to Mother Nature's ways of protecting the forest. And that was through lightning fires that burned off the underbrush in the high country. And the tribal, the indigenous people along the river used fire to burn off the lower foothills in an effort to protect the communities. There was multiple reasons that these fires were used. Oftentimes, it was done to create a smoke inversion level that actually cooled the river, and when the cooling of that river triggered the fish to start to run from the ocean. So these are all tribal ecological knowledge facts. Again, that had been, I refer to them as best practices. They've been used for thousands of years. The intention was good, that they wanted to protect the trees, as we say, and because there was quite a bit of logging going on then, and there was money in the trees. We understand that, but again, our efforts now is to let modern science, if you will, catch up with tech, with tribal ecological knowledge.
Thanks for being here, Chairman.
Yoatua, thank you for having me.
When we come back, we'll hear an update from Pawhuska, Oklahoma, where celebrities are a frequent sight on set of the upcoming movie Killers of the Flower Moon. Shannon Shaw Duty is the editor of the Osage News. Her hometown of Pawhuska, Oklahoma is all the buzz these days as a major motion picture is currently being filmed there. Killers of the Flower Moon documents a tragic period in the tribe's history. Welcome, Shannon.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
So tell us, what's the update? What's been happening? The last time you were here, you were talking about filming, which had just begun. We're now a couple months in. What's happening there?
Well, filming is progressing, and they just renewed their leases for the middle of September. So filming is going to be ongoing all through the summer and should end around the middle of September. We have become accustomed to seeing the stars in the film. We've made relationships with the actors that are in the film. They've been more than gracious and kind to all of us. We just recently had our Ilonchka dances here in Gray Horse, Hominy, and Pawhuska. And many of the film crew and cast, including the lead roles and director Martin Scorsese, they all visited our Ilonchka dances and even danced with us. So it was a sight to see. I don't know when we'll ever be able to say that, Leonardo DiCaprio and Lily Gladstone were at our Elonshka dances, but it happened. And, we're just very grateful that they are continuing to make these inroads with the Osage community.
That is so special. Exactly what you mentioned. Whenever would you see Leonardo DiCaprio, at a ceremony like this? Was Robert De Niro there as well?
We never did see Robert De Niro, but they ate at our camps. Martin Scorsese, Leonardo DiCaprio, Lily Gladstone, Jesse Plemons, Scott Shepherd, Michael Abbott, Pat Healy, Cara Jade Myers, Janae Collins, Jillian Dion, Tantu Cardinal. All of these actors and the William Ballou, they have all been around our Elonshka. They've made Osage friends. These families honored them on one of our most special days of our Elonshka ceremonies by calling them up and giving them gifts. Cara Jade Myers, who is playing Anna Brown in the film, Anna Brown's murder is one of the main murders in the film, and she is a big central character that gets this investigation going. So the actress who's playing her, Cara Jade Myers, was dressed by an Osage family to dance with us. And that's very special. That doesn't get to happen all the time. That's not a normal thing that we do. So it's reserved for someone that we really honor and appreciate. And she has really been a big part of our community. So an Osage family from Gray Horse dressed her, and she danced with us. So it was a big deal.
I could imagine, especially because filming is happening at a time when so many events around the country and around the world are happening in regards to Indigenous people. Because those Native and non-Native actors and celebrities have sort of taken an interest in this community, do you think that will play forward in the years to come when filming is wrapped?
I do. There are some secret moves going on behind the scene with Scorsese and DiCaprio and Tantu Cardinal and some of their organizations that they support. Some fundraising ideas are being passed around. So I don't think they're just going to leave and just, never see us again or never care about the Osage Nation ever again. I don't think that's how that's going to play out. So I have heard whispers and rumors about different things to drive fundraising here for an Osage Reign of Terror memorial for the victims of the Reign of Terror, educational programs and activities for our communities, because there are still so many non-Native people in our community that don't know what happened here, and they need to be educated about that. So there are things that are happening that aren't ready to be published yet or talked about publicly, but I do know that there are things that are going on that is going to last for years to come.
That's great to hear. Indian Country Today will be very excited to hear what that news is. And we, of course, love working with the Osage News about, what you all report. I want to switch gears a little bit. Tell us about the new project that your news organization is implementing to document the stories of families.
Yes, we are calling it Hope and Resilience, Osage Family Stories from the Reign of Terror. And what it is that it is a project for the community. It is directed and led by the Osage News, but what we really want to do is provide a platform for all of these Osage families that have stories from the Reign of Terror, because growing up here on the Osage Reservation, almost every almost every family has a story of what happened. Either they were had relatives that were died mysteriously, or they died young. They were married to non-Indians, so they lost their share, their head rights and their shares in our mineral estate. That happened quite often. A lot of families lost land. They don't know how they lost it. Guardians took money and squandered wealth and so these, or took head rights away. And so these are stories that we want all of these families to tell. Killers of the Flower Moon is a wonderful book, but it only highlights one family. And there are so many families on the Osage Reservation that suffered from this whole period. And it didn't stop in 1925 or 1927, whenever Ernest Burkhart and Bill Hale went to prison. You know, it lasted for a very long time. And there are many of us that still believe that they weren't the main orchestrators of this event. We feel like the main orchestrators were bankers, attorneys in Pawhuska. So William Hale and Ernest Burkhart were just, you know, a lower level crime syndicate. So we feel like it was a major operation coming out of Pawhuska that targeted many Osage families to take their land and their head rights away, their money. So what we want to do is give those families a chance to tell their story. So it's not just one family story. And after all of these stories are told, we're going to compile them into a book so that we can sell to our Osage community, to the non-Osage community, so they can be educated on what happened here, on what our families have remember, and the impacts of that, because we're going to talk about how we feel that this changed our family history.
We will happily look forward to your reporting, Shannon. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And that's a slice of our Indigenous world. I'm Aaliyah Chavez. Thank you for watching.
Sometimes you got to take a stand just because you know you can. Oh, you got to run, you got to run. Standing Rock. This is Indian Country Today.